Good evening, all of you, and hot welcome. Today, end of the road for IC engine. This is the subject of the discussion. Currently, in every segment of automobiles, electric vehicle is being talked about as its future. So now this panel will discuss about electric as a fuel and what is the future of the electric vehicle. I welcome and invite our moderator for the session, Mr. Arun Malhotra. Please come, welcome him. Our auto industry veteran, Mr. Arun Malhotra. Mr. Amitabh Saran, CEO, Altigen Pulsar Lab. Mr. Amitabh Saran, please welcome. Mr. Atul Arya, Head Energy System Division, Panasonic India. Mr. Diego Graffi, Chairman and Managing Director, Piaggio Vehicles Private Limited. Mr. Sandeep Mandekar, Vice President, Mahindra Finance. And lastly, Mr. Prakash Rao, Piaggio Dealer. And I request our moderator, Mr. Arun Malhotra, kindly take the session. Please.
Good evening. Always difficult to have the last panel of the day, or virtually last, because as they say in cricket, you have the Duckworth-Lewis method which starts operating. So the organizer keeps pushing you that there are less time. The audience has already had a long day. So I think the idea would be to keep the group so that we can make the discussion so that at least for interest to you. Well, the topic itself of today is is a very loaded question if you look at the topic. Three-wheelers, is it the end of the road for IC engines? And when I look at the entire electric vehicle, because a lot of people do ask questions, what's happening in EV? And there is no one tale on EV. Charles Dickens wrote a novel 150 years back, it's a tale of two cities. The best of times, the worst of times. But if I look at the EV market in the three segments, two-wheelers is one, passenger vehicles is one, and small commercial vehicles or three-wheelers are others, very different. Penetration in cars is hardly 1.5%. Penetration in two-wheelers, although there's a lot of noise, heat generated, is hardly 6 to 7%. And where three-wheelers, not much of noise, the penetration, if you count the undercarriage, has reached already 50%. So clearly that's why the question becomes valid. Now, the question will be that, will it be the only fuel? Will it be the electric will totally replace all the fuels which you have? There is a CNG, petrol, diesel, that we'll discuss in the panel. But I think what is working for the three-wheelers or the small commercial vehicles in electric vehicles is that all the challenges which were, whether it's the range anxiety, reach, reassurance, they are working very favorably. In terms of operating cost, in terms of owning cost, the type of usage it is there, in terms of fixed routes, which is important. So this is working very well for it. But we still need to see where we have, what the journey we have covered and how do we have to go. So we'll start the discussion right away. The first part we'll focus on what has happened in the last 1 year. And why I say it's important is there's a saying in English that if you don't learn by history, you stand condemned by it. But there's a reverse saying that if you follow history blindly, you also stand condemned by it. So you have to follow the best part of both histories. So talking to you, starting with you, Mr. Diego Graffi, I mean, welcome. You have had a very eventful, it must be a baptism of fire as far as India is concerned, because a very different market, what you would have experienced in Europe, I'm sure. But when I was talking to you last, your insight, your knowledge is something very great, which is there. And as a company, you focus on all fuels. You're talking of CNG, your diesel, and you have a lot of contribution in EVs also, you're a major player. So from your perspective, what are the 3-4 key trends which have emerged in this transition to EV?
Thank you, Arun, for the question. Thank you, Fada, for inviting me to this very insightful panel. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, I think that first coming to the topic of a panel discussion, that is asking a question, is the end of a story for ICE in three-wheeler? Well, my answer obviously is no. I don't think so, absolutely. I think that instead, what we see positively going forward is a positive coexistence of various kind of how to say, mobility solution in three-wheeler industry. You know, traditionally, three-wheeler was a domain, 50% diesel, 50% CNG, here and there dividing year after year. And what we have seen instead in the last 12 to 18 months is very heavy penetration of EV due to multiple factors. Just to be synthetic and coming to your question, I think that 3 or 4 factors has helped taking overall the penetration of EV into L5 category. I'm not considering L3 because it's completely different kind of business perspective. Now currently, if you look at retail and registration data, penetration of EV into L5 is in the range of 10-15%. But definitely is much higher than all the other sectors that you're managing. Few reasons because of that. For sure, being this vehicle proposition meant for an ability of people. And for them, cost of operation is a fundamental factor. By far, looking at the rally that we have seen in commodity prices and fuel prices in India in the last 12 to 18 months, this phenomenon have taken the cost of operation of three-wheeler into EV solution by far as the most convenient one. This is definitely one important factor. The second important factor is definitely the availability of financing options. Happy to have, along with us here, one representative for the sector. It is a matter of fact that until 12 to 18 months, in general, NBFC system was quite reluctant to finance this kind of solution because there were no credit history from the customer and whatever it is. Instead, what we have seen in the last 12 months, a lot of enthusiasm coming in general from BFC system to finance EV three-wheeler. And last but not least, also definitely the stabilization of the incentive system, FAME 2 and other state policy incentive that has definitely giving a big relief in terms of acquisition price to the customer and has helped to increase demand, and we expect that this demand will go into increase even further in the following.
Thank you. So Mr. Graffi did mention about a very unique point, and I was very emphatic at the very first that this is not the end. It's clearly not the end. And what he would say is like, you know, we have this concept of coalition governments, a rainbow government. That is a concept which is working. But next we have Mr. Amitabh Saran, who truly believes in EV because his company is focused on last mile connectivity, goods carriers, EV. So I open the house to you. Do you agree with Mr. Graffi, or you diplomatically agree or disagree with him? But please be very frank, clear in your comments.
Thank you, Arun. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. I know it's Lodi. You're probably wanting to head back home very soon, so thank you for being here. So in the short term, I will have to say that they will coexist. But I think it's the writing is on the wall that very quickly, and I feel that in specific verticals, for specific use cases, you will start seeing the transition happen very, very fast.
Has it already started happening, or you feel it's what's happened in the last year, if you think?
You can very clearly see the trend, right? I mean, last year itself, you know, was it July or August or some month like that, where the EV sales were actually higher than the traditional fuel sales. Obviously, it included L3s also as part of it. Whatever it might be, but the trend is clear. So if you look at the trend, it's becoming increasingly clear that people will start having to move to electrification. You cannot wish it away. How much, how soon, in what sectors, for which use cases, I think that has to be evaluated. And I think public is very, very wise. I think the important thing also was that what good quality EV is being made in this country. I think that is what gives confidence to people. Like Diego mentioned, I mean, everyone wants to have a commercially viable vehicle. And if it's a good quality, commercially viable, helps them save a lot of money, you know, that's what commercial vehicles are. So I strongly believe that this is going to happen. How quickly is it going to happen in the next 3 years? Is it going to happen in the next 5 years? I'm extremely bullish, obviously. You know, I'm talking about 2030 dates. I think one of the trends that I did want to mention, and this is something that I noticed this year, was on the data side. Everyone wants to be an owner of the data. Everyone. Whether it's the financier, whether it's the end customer, whether it is you know, anyone in the ecosystem is looking at being the ownership of the data. I think data has suddenly become very important, which was not the case till about a year and a half back. Everyone was saying, we'll figure out something for it. But I think that importance to data, which means that as an engineering-driven organization, AI, ML, and all these things are becoming very, very increasingly important. So I just wanted to say that that was some alarming thing that I realized. I mean, you can lose deals because you're not willing to part with data. It was very interesting. So anyway, that I would say, that.
So Amitabh is very clear. The trend is clear. The direction is clear. But how fast the direction will, where will it fructify? What will be the sub-segments where it will happen? We'll discuss all the challenges, opportunities. And a very interesting thing which nobody is associated with data in three-wheelers. Generally, when people associate data with very, very high funda stuff. But what he's saying that data, importance of data, whether for financiers, for manufacturers, for retailers, is very important, even for the government. So that's clearly thing, and he's a great proponent. So, and the proof of pudding, as he says, in the eating. Because commercial viability has been proven. Otherwise, you can't have so much penetration. That's what you get to it. Sandeep, we'll come to you later because I think we'll come to Mr. Arya first. Mr. Arya, your company Panasonic is the company which is known internationally for cells manufacturing, and you supply to Tesla. Although India also you supply to some companies, not to three-wheelers. How do you see? Because one of the biggest challenges people say is that the way lithium prices, the way other things are happening, the points which are working in favor, it will boomerang or it will play negatively in terms of economics or in terms of costing. So how do you see from that perspective? And since you provide sales, do you think the prices will go down or they will shoot up exponentially?
The toughest question. But anyway, so before that, namaste and good evening to everyone and happy Lodi to all of you. Can I answer the other question also? Yeah. Okay, only this one. Yeah. No. But I'll touch upon this one as well. So first of all, whether it is end of ICE for three-wheelers or two-wheelers, in my opinion, maybe not. For simple reasons, like Amitabh, I tend to agree with Amitabh and Diego both, but more balanced view in terms of what I believe is that these are competing technologies and they are yet to prove that they are far superior than other. It's like, there used to be a debate and there was a Harvard professor who sort of predicted that with the advancement in communication, travel will take the beating, right? But the fact is that travel has not vanished, right? Even during the COVID, we all realized, we all felt that virtual is everything. But the moment COVID was over, we wanted to get out and look at the airports. So I think it's always going to be a balance because resources are finite everywhere. Even in the battery side, resources are finite and petroleum is finite. And the way we can bring them up is also finite. We don't have unlimited ability to get one resource. But what we can rely on is on the human intelligence to beat the ways, to get the better fuels. So within batteries, perhaps you will have better batteries, better chemistries, better ways to deliver the energy or better ways to deliver the clean energy. And I think that's where I want to also link my answer to your question, which was directed about the battery prices. So just to give you statistics, even though statistics always don't reveal everything, like 15% may or may not mean the whole end, because devil always lies in the detail. In 2015, the global capacity of lithium-ion manufacturing was roughly around 50 or less than 50 gigawatt. As of today, Europe alone is building 500 gigawatt of capacity. By end of 2030, we are expected to have somewhere around 2,500 plus 200 gigawatt of capacity. So look at the scale expansion. And there is no way you can get the resources. So for example, lithium, cobalt, nickel, the current metals and the chemicals which are used in the building of batteries, you can't get such a huge scale in a very short period of 15 years and still keep the prices same. So the fact is that there is a huge demand, and we must agree that India has taken a big leap, but at the same time we started much later than what the rest of the world did. So the Americas of the world and the Europes of the world and the Chinas of the world are far ahead of us in terms of their deployment. So Tesla alone consumes large amount of capacity, which is some aggregate of greater than what we consume in India. Just one company in terms of lithium ion. Therefore, in my opinion, the battery prices may not cool down to the same curve which has been predicted by some of the people by just doing mathematical calculation. They will cool down perhaps, like I said, there is an improvement in chemistries happening. For example, as a company, we have taken a sort of a target to reduce cobalt and some of those precious metals which are really beating the price up instead of down. So I think that's where we will see the direction to go.
Mr. I mentioned very clearly, I mean, he also believes that you have good company. Believes the end is not there. I mean, there will be some proportions have to be same, so he's supporting you. But clearly what he mentioned is with the resources always being a challenge and a constraint, innovation will come in. And it also depend upon how the cell chemistry, how the various technologies emerge. Because the present technology or the present lithium, the way it is, it will not be the journey. But I'm sure they say necessity is the mother of invention, so something will emerge and it will be better. And we hope Panasonic prices will be 1/3 of the prices after 3 years down the line. So that's just a hope. I'm just not putting a point of view. We'll come to Mr. Prakash Rao. Mr. Prakash Rao, incidentally, I don't know whether you know, is one of the largest dealers, distributors or dealers of three-wheelers in the country for the last 15 years?
20 now.
20 years. Now, I even don't think Amitabh Bachchan has had such a reign of 20 years. So now, so you are sitting in front of your MD of the company whom you represent. Now you are selling all types of vehicles. Because with all the being the largest, you're selling diesel, petrol, CNG, and also electric vehicles. Now I want the voice of the customer. What is the voice of the customer coming in the last 1 year?
So like you mentioned that my experience over 2 decades in selling three-wheelers, one good thing is this customer adapts very well. Okay. But having said that, I think to understand this customer, we need to actually divide the market into passenger segment and cargo segment. Passenger segment, largely, not largely, people just buy as an employment tool. So it's an employment tool. So for them, the metrics are totally different. They don't want to learn about technology. They want a product which can actually satisfy their requirement. It should be low cost in terms of maintenance, and there should not be too much of complications. Where will I get my fuel? Where should I wait for my fuel? So if you look at it, CNG is a classic example we all saw. Though it's definitely cheaper than diesel, but then why it didn't take off? Because the customer had to wait in line to get his fuel. And this customer has to earn by the minute. It's not just a mobility solution for somebody else, but for him it's a measure of livelihood. So the way they look at it is completely different. And the other part is the cargo segment. Again, in cargo, we have 2 classifications. One is largely, again, it's an employment tool. Okay, and they use it for hiring, they use it for transportation, and there's a captive audience. The captive audience is where we saw they are ready to adapt to what is new, the electric story. But again, in the hiring segment, they are not, because it doesn't work out. If I have to wait for 4 hours to charge and again go out and again, do my rounds, come back again, charge. So I lose that business. So the way this consumer looks at this whole thing is completely different from how a two-wheeler or a car or a truck customer looks at it. So for him, it's just one more fuel. And the day this fuel makes most sense in terms of availability, affordability, and then I should not have a complex way to operate that fuel. So that's how they look at it. So this is the consumer perspective as far as.
So Prakash, as your name says, you've thrown a lot of Prakash on the issue and a lot of light on the issue. One thing which is structured, I was talking about Tale of Three Cities, and we were talking of three-wheelers, passenger vehicles, and two-wheelers. And he said that there's a tale of 4 cities which exist within three-wheelers also. There's a load segment, there's a passenger segment, and within there's a captive, there's a big player, there's a small player. So there are dynamics, and I think one of the key things is the three-wheeler business is run by you to make certain economics, which is there, and that will drive it. But you still didn't answer the question, what do you think is happening? Is the tilt happening? Is the direction fast? Amitabh said the speed of change.
So I will not agree that it's happening fast or it's happening slow. It's not the point. The point is, it's only one segment which is actually doing the shift.
Okay.
But there's a large segment which will not shift at this point of time.
So I think it's a very interesting point we'll take in the next part. There is a certain segment, because you can gain very fast in a certain segment, but if you run against the Great Wall of China or the Rock of Gibraltar, you are in a problem challenge statement. Coming to Sandeep, you know, when we talk of the financing part, and you know, generally financiers have been very wary of. I'm not talking of Mahindra Finance, which is a very aggressive, focused company with 31 branches, but finance has been wary of electric vehicles, and rightfully so. They don't know the resale value. They don't know what is the written down, what will happen on the technology. So is that trend changing somewhere in the last 1 year? Or it's still very, like they say, a good banker is one who'll give you all the cash when you don't need it and will not give you anything when you require it. So is that the trend in three-wheelers or no?
So yeah, let me first start. Good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. Thanking FADA for having this discussion out here. While I will get to the answer of whether it's the end of the road for ICE or not towards the end, but let me talk about a financer's view when we look at a product. Let me tell you, when a financer finances a customer, he actually underwrites the customer first and then looks at the product or the asset that is being underwritten. Now, this typically happens for a product which is already in the market. When it comes to a newer product like a EV vehicle, I mean, that's where a combination of the customer as well as the asset that is being purchased puts together the credibility and says whether we should go in for this financing or not. Yes, last 12 months have made a change to all of this. There was a time when we were all looking at, sitting on the fence, waiting and wondering to say, what's going to happen? Is this going to survive? Will the EV take off as quickly as it has taken off, especially in the three-wheeler segment? Without opening up a debate between the L3 and L5, let me tell you what the L3 has done is, it's built in a lot of confidence into the financiers. Okay, because you have seen it for the last 12 months. You have seen that you have people who have purchased the L3, have been able to repay, have been able to run their businesses or, the work that they are into. That adds a lot to the financiers to say, it is here to survive. It is here to be there. And that's why not now? Dip your foot into the water and check the temperature that is going on there. And I think that's what more or less the financiers are going to do. What adds to the confidence is big players, established players are already into the EV. So it is no longer a small boys game. It is going to become a big game for sure as we keep on going forward. And I would say that's where financiers are going to slowly but steadily get into financing the EV. We have already got into it in a small way. And I think everybody is going to continue doing it. In terms of whether it's the end of the road for ICE, I think it's a controversial subject with very little controversy left on the conclusion. More or less everybody does believe that, that's where it will be not an end of the road. It is going to start the transition. How long the transition takes is something for all of us to watch and see.
So I think all the panelists are very wary on that comment, end of the road. I still remember when VP Singh, Vishwanath Pratap Singh being the Prime Minister, they asked him, how do you see the country? Great success. He said it's a new dawn, but it's a misty dawn. So somewhere that's the thing which I'm getting at. Now, coming to the second part of the discussion, which is more important, what needs to be done? What are the challenges? What are the opportunities? Because, sometimes quick success can happen, quick wins. What are the challenges, opportunities? Like a lot of people, if I have to be the critic, I'll say it may look 50%, but a large proportion of this is converted by cycle rickshaws, which are getting electrified. So this is not the real EV revolution. If you remove that out, the L3 is out, or probably that will reduce. Second, people might say, it is running on subsidies, state government subsidy, FAME 2-based subsidies. So let's look at it in a very open mind. Let's look at the challenges and opportunities. And if you have challenge in your opportunities, you need to overcome the challenges, maximize the opportunities, and all the players in the ecosystem have to work together. So Mr. Graffia, from your perspective, if this EV revolution has to be more permanent across segments, what are the challenges and opportunities, and what do you think is required from the various players in the ecosystem?
Well, going out, following your question, going out from the typical needs and ecosystem of three-wheeler and going more in general across sectors, I think that one of the facts that you mentioned definitely has helped to drive the increase of demand of electric in general across the country in a very unexpected way in the last 12, 18 months. That definitely has been incentive. FAME 2 incentive scheme has been, let me say, it is objectively seen, for example, in two-wheeler sector. Scooter sector has jumped 5 times into a V solution when incentive has been increased from 10,000 to 15,000 rupees per kilowatt hour of battery installed. So in the span of just 2 months, demand increase of 5 times due to the advantage the customer is getting when he's buying the vehicle. This effect we have seen at a minor extent also on three-wheeler. So that means that definitely incentive, looking at the fact in perspective, and subsidies in general are still required to increase and improve the transition to EV across sectors. So now it is known that incentive are going to, FAME 2 is going to end March 24. We have no clarity if it will be extended or revised in a different way, but definitely some clarity from that point of view definitely could help companies to invest in the right direction. So if incentive will be discontinued, we are most probably to divert our attention maybe to battery swap as a different kind of technological solution that will, let me say, avoid impacting too much on consumer when buying the new vehicle. I'm going also a little bit, let me say, in a different direction, going out of three-wheeler sector and going more in, for example, in two-wheeler sector. I think that some kind of regularization in terms of performance of vehicle could help also to increase demand and to lower down cost of solution. Now we see a lot of high-speed scooter going on the road, and these high-speed scooter are very, very high cost because battery, powertrain are definitely linked to provide the need of giving that kind of performance. And this is something that is happening only in India. In Europe, USA, in the rest of the world, in China itself, EV scooters are meant to go 45 km per hour maximum. For example, some cap in terms of performance will help to reduce the specs of a vehicle and consequently reduce also the price and the cost of industrialization, and consequently will detach, let me say, the entire subject for the aspect of the continuation, discontinuation of the FAME 2 incentive. Last but not least, I think that infrastructure development is absolutely a need. It is a matter of fact that for three-wheeler mainly, as, let me say, Arya was mentioning, for sure there is and Prakash was mentioning, there are not many customers, three-wheeler customers that are willing to wait 4 or 5 hours. And adding even more, most of them, they don't have a capability to recharge the vehicle at their place because they don't have availability of. So the spread of infrastructure for a charge, independent if it is fixed battery or battery swap, can be definitely help to improve the availability of customer to transit to EV as a new mobility solution.
So, 3 points Mr. Regrafis mentioned. He said one thing was on the government support. It's 2024 with the FAME 2 benefit. Second, he mentioned on standardization. And third thing which he mentioned on infrastructure. These are challenges also and opportunities also because you have to get them correct. And the audience, I'll just say, please keep your questions ready because we'll have at least 5 to 7 questions from the audience and you can direct them to any panelists you want or I can forward it. Mr. Looking at the challenges, opportunities, what do you think are, and what is the solution? What has to be done? If you have a challenge or an opportunity, you have to maximize the opportunity and you have to overcome the challenge. What will be required to be done? First of all, what are they and what is to be done by various parts of the ecosystem?
Yeah, so, we keep dealing with this all the time, as a startup that's been around in this space for the last 10 years. There's a lot that has evolved. And I think the first thing that has changed is that you can't wish EVs away because the quality of the EVs that are being made, both from the larger players as well as the smaller players, is getting better and better, which is adding to a lot of confidence in people. So I think that is a very positive step. The challenge obviously is very clear. Financing of vehicles, very, very important. I think commercial vehicles, pretty much 100% of commercial vehicles are financed. Three-wheelers is not the traditional place where most of the commercial banks actually do financing. It's sad in a lot of ways, and I think EVs give them the opportunities to be in a position to finance it, because obviously a lot of data is coming out. You can remotely access the vehicle, you can remotely immobilize a vehicle and all that. So I think it's a huge opportunity in that space. More and more financing coming in will greatly help the adoption of these. We just spoke about L3. L3 is a classic example. If you look at it, and I've traveled a lot in UP and Bihar, trying to understand the L3 ecosystem. There was a time when most of it was, electricity stolen to charge these guys. Now there is an infrastructure at the mohalla level where these are being charged, and batteries are being taken care of. The ecosystem is ready once you have a opportunity there. So people sense a business opportunity, and then this is India, right? There will always be someone who's willing to actually provide a solution for it. And it works like a charm. I mean, think about it. In the last 5 or 6 years, 2 million L3 vehicles have been made.
2 million, huh?
2 million. 463 odd people are registered who are making L3 vehicles. They're all type approved guys, right? Whether they're getting subsidy or not is a different thing, right? So there is a case without subsidy where it works. Obviously, that becomes an opportunity. We just discussed about lithium. I think you are going to see newer chemistries come about. I know it will take time. So no one is talking about that, right? It will take time. Subsidies has been a reality across the globe. Let us not kid ourselves. In every country where EVs have been there, I think subsidies have been around. So the government of India should also take cognizance that they started the subsidy for a specific reason. With a large amount of money, has it been consumed? If it's not been consumed, and there is an opportunity to be able to push that thing, why not continue with it? So I am fairly certain that some form or the other of subsidy is going to be around, whether it is directly to manufacturers, to end customers, or there's some kind of subvention, something that happens. I'm sure a lot of those opportunities are going to show up in the ecosystem. I'm fairly certain about that. So I think one place where I do see a little bit of a challenge is in terms of trained manpower.
Oh, manpower.
We don't discuss that too often, but I think the EV infrastructure, whether it is in terms of workshop guys, whether it is in terms of people who are manufacturing, whether it's in terms of dealers, distributors, the entire value chain, I think there's a lot of learning that has to happen over there, and I think OEMs will have to take some amount of responsibility in making that happen. I think it's a challenge which we will have to, also an opportunity for us to work with engineering institutes, universities and all that to be in a position to push that. I think that'll help.
So I think what Amitabh mentioned clearly is that, the L3 success story of 2 million, and this is not something which is, as he said, taken from the wire. It's actually the infrastructure, the ecosystem has evolved in spite of the government, not because of the government. That's, I think, a very important point which you mentioned. And second thing, he says financing since commercial vehicle has to be 100%. So it can't operate from that manner in third part of it. But manpower, because electric is a different technology. The whole entire ecosystem of the thing doesn't work on electric. So there is that manpower either has to be retrained, redeployed, or new manpower has to come in or to relearn. It's not all that easy. So these are the things which, but he says the future is bright because the momentum has happened. And he says subsidies will be part. Remember in physics, you say, neutron starts a chain reaction. Neutron, when it combines with uranium, it starts a chain reaction. So once the chain reaction starts, then it goes. But you require the neutron till the real chain reaction started, which will continue. That's what I get from him. Coming to Mr. Arya, one question which is a lot of people are saying that a lot of new technologies will emerge, a lot of chemistries will emerge in terms of batteries. Where do you think, you have a better perspective of it than us lesser mortals. Where do you think it is there? Is it a possibility in the next 2-3 years, or it's still a distant dream?
I think you kept all the difficult questions for me, right?
Okay. Where my knowledge is limited, I'm using it.
So, if I were to simplify the process of building a lithium-ion chemistry or a cell, new type of cell, even within the same chemistry, if there is a incremental change or a form factor change, it's quite similar to what we see in pharmaceutical industry. It's like a drug discovery, then the phase 1 trials, phase 2 trials, then looking at how it behaves, and you need to really wait for the results. Because two important things are there. One of the most important thing is safety, and then ability to produce that at a scale. which takes a lot of time. So we saw COVID vaccines in spite of global pandemic, it took some time. And this was all trial basis, emergency use case. Typically you see a drug being discovered and coming into production after almost a decade. In terms of battery, the first signs you will see, it will start percolating into your small devices. So lithium ion first started coming into your mobile phones, your laptops, your watches and whatnot. So the day you see a new chemistry coming there, you start to sense that now something is imminent, because you will not go and make a chemistry and straight away build a Tesla-like facility or a gigawatt facility for a new chemistry. So I think that partially answers, but of course there is a lot of work being done. There is a lot of new chemistries being talked about, sodium ion and solid state and variety of those. In my opinion, and I know a lot of people are anxious about it and many people do not want to invest in the new chemistries, saying that, oh, what will happen to my investment if I work on this? I think the wait is going to be at least 5 to 7 years from today to have a mature ecosystem. And trust me, even if something comes in, the scale will not match the current ability, right? So I think this is where the answer is.
Very interesting. You got very interesting. One is you said if the technologies even they will come first in the smaller type of, like say in telephones or smaller products, and then they come. So it will not become overnight, absolutely. And second, as you said, Rome was not built in a day, so it will take time, 4 to 5 years. But there is clear work going on in that part. Coming to Prakash, ground level, what do you see the challenges, opportunities now? What are the top 2 challenges, opportunities, and what help would you require from the other people in the ecosystem, whether it's the government, whether it's the manufacturers, whether it's battery manufacturers, that this gets hastened up?
So whenever we discuss about government policies in India, we say India is a land of countries. So the same thing we see in this whole EV policies. My government has a different policy compared to the next state. And I also operate swapping. I also give a solution of swapping in my market for EVs, and I also sell fixed battery. So very interesting insight I'll give you is that people love swapping. I'm talking about passenger vehicle.
We don't want to get the wrong meaning of that.
So people prefer swapping, and but I always thought because it is sort of cheaper to own or something like that. But then there's one more different insight I got when I was discussing with one set of customers. The point they make is that if I go for fixed battery, and these are the bottom of the pyramid. When you talk about passenger customers, they're at the bottom of the pyramid. So what they say is the moment I start charging the vehicle at my home, my power bill starts going higher, and then the moment it crosses certain threshold, I don't get the benefits which I'm supposed to get. So which is an insight, So somewhere something is coming in the way. So while the customer intent is to get into EV, there's the government policy which is stopping you getting into EV. And I don't think anybody's even thought about it. Yeah. And second is the swapping stations. So we need to get power at a subsidized price for the swapping station, but we don't get it. And there are a lot of policies for that. So you end up operating swapping stations at the regular commercial power. So again, you are actually stopping proliferation of the swapping. So there are a lot of things like this which are not being addressed, according to me. And unfortunately, why it's not addressed? Because each state is dealing with this subject in a separate manner. So what is definitely required is one uniform policy, pan-India. Therefore, the adoption can become much faster.
So I think Prakash mentioned a very clear point, that there are some basic challenges, and it can't be a state policy. It has to be a national policy, and you have to look at the ground level. There's a feedback coming from the ground. Now you can keep on proclaiming, saying some things which are there, and this is good, but the point is, if at the ground level those issues are not resolved, there will always be a challenge statement. And there are some ground level issues which are emerging, because they may look small, but it can be a handling block as part of it. Coming to Sandeep, one of the challenges, in three-wheelers, and I'm talking even before EVs, three-wheelers, if my knowledge is correct, and you can correct me, the rate of financing for three-wheelers which is financed is generally 4 to 5% higher than, at least 5 to 5 or even not higher if not higher. I mean, Amitabh is shaking his head. He says you put a very low figure. Probably I'm trying to be diplomatic. So, if you say, if you want a Ram Rajya or you want to the real world, which is there, if EVs are to be financed at a rate which is like any, and EVs, as Amitabh was mentioning, there's a lot of data. Customers can't run away. There's information of data, there's information of usage. What do you think requires to be done? I'm not saying it will become like passenger vehicles 9%, but can it be to a more reasonable level? And what is required from the various parts of the ecosystem? Because without that, one is the intent of financing. But more than the intent, it is also, intent has to convert into action. So I want to understand from your perspective.
Yeah, so I would not want to limit the answer only to the rate of financing. I think before the rate of financing, let's elevate slightly above and see in terms of why are financiers currently not as proactive, or what are the challenges that they think are stopping them from getting into EV financing. To me, it is not one. Let's look at what are we talking about? We are talking about increasing the EV sales, but it is not actually only the EV sales. It is a much bigger reason for increasing the electric vehicle sales going out there. And one financer probably may not be the only, pillar who will be helping to get this whole thing up. I think it is the entire ecosystem which will have to work towards it. The challenges that a financer faces currently is, you are still not sure about how the product is going to be performing over a period of next 3 years or 4 years. Because you'll appreciate that from a financer standpoint, a vehicle is sold today, but he has to live with it for the next 4 years period when the customer keeps on repaying back to him. And the resale value probably today is one of the biggest concern in terms of what could be a probable resale value at the end of the tenure that could happen out there. Second issue or the challenge that the financer also looks at is the network. Currently, the network is not selling as many vehicles. You are not as efficient going up there and trying to finance because end of the day, cost of financing still remains the same from a people point of view, and if the network is not going to be able to deliver whatever is required from that point, I think you are losing out on the efficiencies. We all know, past experience tells us that the profile of customer who buys a three-wheeler are not somebody who can sustain more than one liability at a point of time. And over a period, you always find that they have some emergencies coming in leading that they are not able to repay what they have to pay on time. And that's why the rate of interest.
Government can do in this?
Yes, coming to it. In fact, from a lending standpoint, there is no incentive today as to why should you take that extra risk to go forward. And probably that's where the policymakers could come into play. You do have this thing called as priority sector lending. Currently, the electric vehicles are not classified under the priority sector lending. So if at all that happens, I mean, that's where you get the benefit of sourcing it at a slightly lesser price. The pool gets securitized, and that's the incentive for you to go ahead and finance that sector coming in. COVID told us that you have credit guarantee schemes which came in. Probably, there is a need for that to get reactivated for the electric vehicles for some time, which will give you some more strength to start to get into that kind of financing. Last but not the least, I think from a financer standpoint, we should not only look at that asset or the electric vehicle which is financed. I think we should start to look at, are you able to also finance the charging stations? Are you also finance the entire ecosystem which is going to help and make this EV vehicle successful on the road? Otherwise, you may finance a vehicle, but if the ecosystem is not done and it is not up to the mark, you may not be successful. I think it is going to be, end of the day, a partnership program between the OEM, the dealer, the financer, and the government, which could put this, on a fast-tracked mode, and that's where, and it may not be required to be there for a lifetime. You do it for the next 12 months or 24 months, and then it has its own energy to pull it forward.
So, very relevant point to what he said is, first of all, he said, don't take the financiers as the bad boys. They are the stumbling blocks to the EV revolution. So it's not the case. So we're not taking it that way. So I don't think anybody from the audience also feels that way. The second point which he mentioned is that clearly, the technology is unknown. How will it perform 2 years? Because finance an asset for 3 years. You don't know what 3 years whether a vehicle is operating or not. That's the thing. And second thing is, when we talk of so much of priority, I mean, there can be no better priority sector than a three-wheeler segment. This is son of the soil who's creating employment, generation, last mile connectivity. So where all these schemes which are there, the employee credit guarantee schemes, why are they not working on financing? So once it happens, then it starts a virtuous cycle. And you said all the stakeholders have to work jointly. So it has to be a symphony, not a cacophony. It's like a Zubeen Mehta symphony which has to come, so then it starts happening. So we're coming to the last part of the discussion. So I have one question to all the panelists, and we'll get just one number for that. So let's exclude L3 segment from it for the moment, because L3 you can clearly define in terms of power, in terms of maximum speed. Without the L3 segment, what would be the contribution of EV 2 years down the line, your prediction? So we'll start with Prakash. We'll start the reverse way. So we have excluded L3 because that you can define, because it might look very high because of that part of it. So let's remove, as they say in a good school, in the pre-board exams are the toughest exams. So we are removing L3 in it. So those marks you don't get. So without L3, what will be the penetration of EV three-wheelers 2 years down the line, January 2025?
So, I mean,
I just need a percentage now.
No, that's right. My answer is quite complicated because
I need a percentage. I need just one number.
How I look at the market in a different fashion.
You may look market differently, but I'm saying minus L3. So, because then otherwise we won't be able to evaluate all people together.
20% is what I think is
2 years on the way. Okay. Coming to Mr. Arya, from your perspective.
I think it should be around 25 or somewhere close to that.
So 20 to 25. Coming to Amitabh.
At least 50.
Okay, so 20, 25, 50. Coming to you, Mr. Ravi.
Depend of incentive continuation or not. If it will continue, 25 to 30%.
30. So I'm seeing a lot 28, 30, 50. Amitabh is more liberal. Sandeep, your final word?
Well, I don't have the best way of calculating, but I would go with Amitabh that it could be close to around 50%.
Okay. So there are two people talking of 50%. 3 talking somewhere in 25, so we'll take it about 35 to 38%, which is big because we've not taken L3 into it. So that's really big, and you look at the size of the market. And with all this revolution happening in the country on last mile connectivity, which is the big e-commerce, which is happening, the district connections, the focus, it's a large opportunity. So it can't be judged by the current market size. I mean, you're talking of this percentage from a much larger. So thank you for all your perspectives, but I think audience, your questions, and you can direct the question to a particular panelist, or you can tell me the question, I'll direct it to the person whom I think is relevant to answer the question. So you can shoot your questions. Yeah, we'll have somebody from the back benches first. Huh? Last 4 rows se question, nahi aega the front row se, because always the first 2-3 row people are the ones who ask maximum questions in class even. Hanji, last 3 rows, we'll go to last 3 rows and then we'll come. पीछे, अच्छा, मैं चलता हूँ. हाँ जी, मैं माइक लेके चलता हूँ पीछे. हाँ जी, कोई चाहे हिंदी में सवाल पूछे, इंग्लिश में पूछे, that's okay, I'll translate it, that's not a problem. कोई सवाल पूछना चाहते हैं आप, which is there?
Hi. Just it may be a simple question, but I am little worried. But the industry is all we are speaking about EV. Now, are the industries ready to disposal of these batteries?
Okay. So, whom do you want to answer the question, or
any?
So, who will take that question from the panelists? So, we'll have Mr. Arya because.
No, I can attempt. Of
I
course.
attempt.
So, look, it's a very valid question, very important question. As far as government is concerned, there is a EPR policy which is already there, which is announced, and it mandates. I think the effect is from 25 onwards. So, like for any other electronics and other goods, any supplier will have to take out a percentage of the sales in the previous years and bring that back and recycle it, right? So this question, the only difficulty is that the mechanism to do that is still evolving in our country like any other e-waste. So it is covered as a e-waste, and it also can help in getting the raw material for making the new batteries. So this will be a very helpful policy actually.
So good. So there is an intent, there's a policy. The only question is the policy in terms of implementation. Yes. Hanji. Yeah. So now we're coming to the back benches. Although there are a lot of bright students at the back benches also. So it's not that yeah.
Yeah. Hi. Good evening. So we hear a lot about batteries and battery manufacturing and disposal of batteries. But a critical component for electric vehicles is also the motors, which powers the vehicle, which is the counterpart of an engine for an IC. So how critical is the motor and motor technologies is to a cargo mover, which is a three-wheeler vehicle?
Yeah, Amitabh, you can answer this.
It is critical. So, short answer, very, very critical, because without the motor, obviously, you don't have a moving vehicle. I guess question is about the technologies. So, a lot of technologies exist, right? And they've been around for a while. Newer technologies are coming in, and they are routinely being tested in different kinds of mobility applications. So, not necessarily in vehicles, but in different other areas. A lot of development in that direction is happening. I guess every geography and every use case requires a different kind of machine. I think that's where we should have our ears close to the ground to determine what works best for your scenario. For example, in India, it's not just about rare earths or those kinds of things that we are importing or not importing. It is also about serviceability, manufacturability of these machines. Because if you're talking about large numbers, you cannot just say that ho jayega. Yeah, or when it breaks down, we'll see. No, you have to decide about it today. I mean, here we open engines to replace a 17 rupee bush inside it. We're not going to throw away traction motors, right? So you need to have everything. When you think of a vehicle, you have to start thinking in that direction. So absolutely right, motors are extremely critical and newer technologies are coming in, but a lot of these will undergo a lot of change in the coming years.
So what he mentioned is a lot of change and horses for courses. That's an important point. Any questions? Now we can come to the row. Acha, now we are getting more questions from behind. It's there. Haji, our most learned gentleman from Guwahati, I mean from his perspective. He'll ask a question.
You see, I'm coming from the northeastern region. So we have a major issue there, and that is the power. We don't have good quality power. There's a lot of voltage fluctuations. And some electric three-wheelers we sold, and we find that the customer is unable to charge those three-wheelers at his home. So that is the case in the entire region. So there, it'd be impossible to sell an electric vehicle, because if you sell an electric vehicle there and you finance it, then we find that every day it has to come back to the garage, because there's no power, steady, good quality power.
So what is the solution for that? I mean,
what is the solution for
that? Maybe solar. I mean, it's very little you can do. It's like saying that you don't have petrol or diesel in your area. How will you run your vehicle? No doubt about it. So if it is not available, you're absolutely right. I think there are renewable sources of generation. Now solar is becoming big. I don't know if Northeast, how much solar is available in those regions. We'll have to take it region by region, without a doubt.
So now we come to the last two questions. So one question we remark for the ladies. If the ladies in the segment would like to ask a question. Huh? So no ladies want to ask, I'll come move to. So we were in the first two rows. So two questions we'll have. You are the organizer, so you cannot ask a question. So we'll have to give right to somebody else.
Not the brightest student of the class in the front row, but my question is like जैसे हमारे प्रधानमंत्री जी का एक सपना है आत्मनिर्भर भारत. तो आत्मनिर्भर भारत के पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से जिस तरीके से थ्री व्हीलर के हमारे जो ड्राइवर्स होते हैं या गाड़ी ओनर्स होते हैं, तो उनको एक अच्छा फाइनेंसिंग का ऑप्शन चाहिए होता है, जिसकी वजह से वो गाड़ी लेके अपना रोजगार चला सके और आत्मनिर्भर बनने का उनका एक सपना होता है. लेकिन थ्री व्हीलर में ये देखा जाता है कि रेट ऑफ इंटरेस्ट जिस तरीके से आपने बताया कि 4-5% या 6-7% ज़्यादा होता है किसी भी कमर्शियल के कंपैरिजन में, कमर्शियल फाइनेंसिंग के कंपैरिजन में. तो मेरी एक रिक्वेस्ट है, क्योंकि आप लोग यहाँ पे सब द हुज हू ऑफ द इंडस्ट्री है थ्री व्हीलर के पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से, एंड इसके अंदर दो लोग जैसे संदीप जी, प्रकाश राव जी बहुत अच्छा रोल प्ले कर सकते हैं. इस मैसेज को हम क्यों ना गवर्नमेंट के पास में ये लेके जाए, क्योंकि आजकल आपने देखा होगा कुछ गवर्नमेंट अप टू 10 लाख रुपीस तक का फंडिंग देती है टू स्टार्ट सम वर्क टुवर्ड्स आत्मनिर्भर भारत. तो उस सेंस में मेरी एक रिक्वेस्ट रहेगी सारी जूरी मेंबर्स से, एक प्लेटफॉर्म पे आके सारी इंडस्ट्री के लिए, ना कि मतलब इलेक्ट्रिक के लिए नहीं, सिर्फ आईसी के लिए नहीं, बट थ्री व्हीलर इंडस्ट्री एज अ होल, पैसेंजर और कमर्शियल दोनों के पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से कुछ ऐसा हम सामने लेके जाए गवर्नमेंट के सामने, जिसके अंदर कुछ इंसेंटिव फाइनेंसर्स के लिए भी हो जाए और उस वजह से सेल्स भी ड्राइव हो जाए थ्री व्हीलर का, रिस्पेक्टिव ऑफ द फ्यूल. Maybe it may be electric or it may be ICs.
So I'm hearing that this is more as a suggestion and a request.
Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely.
Suggestion and request. निर्देश नहीं है, संदेश है.
हाँ, suggestion मैं इसीलिए बोला हूँ कि
निर्देश
suggestion देना
आदेश
चाहूँगा.
भी नहीं है, निर्देश भी नहीं है, संदेश है, उपदेश है, उपदेश भी है, संदेश और उपदेश साथ साथ है. So it's basically saying that the stakeholders who are so important should take this message that if India has to become self-sufficient, and we talk about Atmanirbhar, which is the Prime Minister talks, it has to start from this. It's a very important area. So we come to the last question. Who was on the last? Yeah, the lady is there to take the question, so we'll go to her. Yeah, she's gained confidence and she's been electrified by the electric discussion.
Hello, good evening. I have a question. We are transitioning from ICs to EVs now, but EVs have a lot of issues. There is the issue of power. There is geopolitics where China is trying to dominate the lithium-ion industry with rare earth extraction, etc. So what is the scope of hydrogen fuel cells? Because that is also an emerging technology. And what can be the time frame for adoption of hydrogen fuel cells in three-wheelers? Because you are all from the three-wheeler industry. Because lithium ion is going to be used across passenger vehicles, commercial, everywhere. So that is a limited resource.
So good. So you were studying addition, subtraction, multiplication. She's asked you to do integral calculus now. So, what's your answer?
I have a very different kind of answer, not directly answering your hydrogen question as such, because like I said, technology is emerging, right? And then we all need to also see the ability to sell it at the right pricing. So this will take some time. I don't know what time it will take. I think Bijan Daruwala is a better person to tell you what is going to happen in the future. But the fact about lithium ion or in general electrification or clean technology is that we should also look at it from the lens of this is not just the India opportunity. We many times talk about India, we many times talk about narrow subjects, but when we talk of macro subjects, we should also see that this is a global opportunity. And India as a country has an opportunity to sell its products to the world. The scale is not limited because we are anyway importing. You said we are importing from China. So it's clear indication that we are not any more restricted to what is produced in India. Then why can't we really sell outside India? So I think, yes, we will import something from China. But like I said, there is going to be recycling of batteries. That means we will have the resources now inside the country. And then we can continuously recycle that and continue to export. So opportunity is pretty large. Whether hydrogen will come, in what form, at what price, we will come to know in future. But right now, let's not be anxious about, this is not there and this is there and we should stop working on this.
The world is one, and as they say, there's an old song, Apna time aayega. So I don't know when hydrogen's time will come. So we had a very illuminating, insightful discussion, and I thank the audience because they put some very challenging questions, and we generated a lot of lead, and a lot of points have come up in terms of challenges, opportunities, just not limited to percentages. But there's a saying, the future is bright. That's what the flavor I'm getting. But there are challenges you can't. It's not like a straight autobahn which you just drive straight. There are potholes also. There are challenges. But we have the resources and we have the will and we have the drive. The EV revolution which has started will be number one in three-wheelers. That's what the sense I'm getting. Thank you very much to all the panelists.
Thank you, sir. We have to facilitate you kindly.
No, it's a confusion, right?
He's like, same team, forget it. Let's not bother. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, sir. We need a photograph.
Group photo.